We are back with another State of the Franchise show. Jason Aponte, Brad Graham here to talk state of free agency. And it has been a wild one. Jason and I did a show last week, and boy, oh boy, things have changed quite dramatically since then. So we'll kind of recap what has been going on, discuss some of the moves, and maybe where we are headed and how the 49ers can continue to either compete for next year or maybe they have something else in mind. We'll talk about all of that coming up right here on State of the Franchise. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it all right now. Mr. Jason Aponte, good to see you, my friend. Again, a lot of stuff has popped off since we last spoke. So let's handle it like this. I'm going to kick it to you. What has been the most surprising move of 49ers free agency thus far?
I don't know, Brad. I guess I'm not as shocked as other people, especially given the departures. And you start to look around with how much money some of these players have made in free agency, and I just, Aaron Banks was never going to get market money, let alone the contract that Green Bay Packers gave him from the 49ers. So that didn't shock me. I feel like the only real move that was made that was kind of a surprise and not even really was the Drake Greenlaw thing. But I think going into this offseason process, we all believe that, Deebo Samuel is probably going to move on. They were going to make a cut from Javon Hargrave and, all these other guys. And even if Mooney Ward didn't have the unfortunate tragedy, I think we were all preparing for him to leave as well, too, just based on,
Right.
the 49ers prepping us by drafting Bernardo Green. So I don't think I was shocked by anything. I think what the biggest issue with 49ers fans is not really the departures, is the names that we spoke to ourselves about replacing. Drew Dahlman, obviously you find out that he's in talks with the Bears and the Bears were never going to let him out of the building. That was one name. I think it's less about the people that have left and the lack of additions in free agency to fill those holes that have fans a little bit more on edge than just the departures themselves.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think part of the fan base kind of crying out because, as we know, some of our fan base can be emotional at times. Not everyone, but of course, they want to see the 49ers put their best foot forward. 49ers are going to be playing in the Super Bowl or the Super Bowl will be played
Speaking
in the
into it, no, no, no,
49ers
no, no. Speaking into
stadium.
existence. No, say it again. Say it one more time.
Hey, based on this offseason, we still got a long way to go. So we'll see how everything comes together. But, I think 49er fans, or at least some 49er fans, have like a dream of seeing the 49ers play in their home stadium at Levi Stadium in the upcoming Super Bowl because, what are they, 1 year removed of, you know, walking off of the field in overtime with the lead against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl and almost coming away with it. So, we've been on this chase, right? Remember, we've even had conversations about like, should we stop calling it Quest for Six? Like, should we move on? Like, just because fans have been wanting that sixth ring for so long. Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, Jed York, Parag Marathe, same as well. And it looked like they were going all in, chips into the middle, spend whatever you want. Go out, get Javon Hargrave. Go spend big and do what you need to do in order to put our best foot forward so we can go win a championship. And unfortunately, last year, 49ers fell short. So I think with what is changing is, yeah, there is going to be a change kind of in philosophy. And with the moves that we've seen, I think the fans are having a hard time with the key pieces, like you've mentioned, Dre Greenlaw leaving in free agency. I saw a lot of fans are pretty, I think emotionally attached to Kyle Juszczyk because he was the longest tenured San Francisco 49er. I think rationally we can all kind of wrap our heads around it. But I think the fact that you mentioned that has the 49ers signed a starter? Have they signed a legitimate starter in free agency? Maybe
Just one.
That might be coming in the secondary, and it seems like the 49ers have a big intention on going after kind of retooling the secondary. So far, they have picked up Trey Tomlinson off waivers from the Rams. They signed Trey Brown today. Yesterday, it was the safeties Richie Grant and Jason Pinnock. And then today, we find out not too long ago that Juan Thornhill's coming in for a visit.
I like
So
that.
a lot of stuff with the secondary, but kind of back to your main point is I think fans are struggling with seeing like what the move is forward of who are we adding and how are they going to fill a role. And so far, and you can tell me otherwise, but it feels like the 49ers have been focusing on depth and special teams.
I guess if you want to put a positive spin, I think Demarcus Robinson has a chance to be the starting wide receiver. If there's no suspension, we have to talk about that as well too when we talk about him because he does have a DUI.
I didn't know
case.
that, and when it first went down, I didn't know he was dealing with a DUI, right?
Yeah, so I mean, when you look at it, the idea of who are going to be the starters, obviously Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, Brandon Ayuk is probably not going to be ready for week 1. Demarcus Robinson, likely has a shot to be a starter as well. So maybe that's your, glass half full type deal. 30 something catches, 7 touchdowns, a guy that's a good red zone weapon.
Coming
I think
off a
that's
career year.
That's kind of where, you can start there. But yeah, for the most part, everything else is depth and special teams. And I think here's the conversation is this special teams unit, while the 49ers have allocated a lot of players and resources to the special teams, it just hasn't come to fruition. Now, is that going to change with a new special teams coordinator? But the 49ers are intent on at least fixing that part of it. So you can't really get upset when you see a bunch of special teamers in the same breath when you were really upset with the fact that the 49ers just need to be a net zero special teams unit for them to win more games, especially last season. So in one breath, that you want the special teams to improve. In another breath, they are, and that's something that is met with a little bit of back. So again, I'm not too shocked with the way the 49ers have dealt with this offseason off the rip, because they've been telling you since the combine that this was coming, and they're sticking to their plan. So I guess the question is less about the plan itself and whether you agree with the plan. That's really where the discussion comes into, because me agreeing with the plan or going along with it doesn't change the plan itself, if that makes sense, right? Like I can't say that I'm shocked because the plan was outlined, but agreeing with the plan is something that's up to you. I'm not going to tell anybody how to feel, about this, but I'm not shocked by any of this because they're literally matching their words with their actions. And this is just where we are with their philosophy this offseason. And that's just something that, whether you agree or not, you kind of just have to get used to. And I think when you put it in that context, maybe it makes you feel better, maybe it doesn't, but I don't know.
No, I hear what you're saying. I think, when you see that the 49ers have a league leading 86 million in dead cap, and they already have looks like a $21.5 million dead cap hit for 2026. It seems like a bit of a balancing of the books. I think if we're going to stick on the word surprise, and I'm assuming you were laughing at the comment that says, Jason, please tell Brad we need to get rid of Moody. Was that the one?
I was smiling at that one. That one and the Brash Cat one is the Dallas podcaster watching this because of my comments yesterday. I just wanted to lighten the mood a little bit with the sour feeling of free agency by kind of making fun of the Dallas Cowboys for everybody, and that's something that we can all get behind as 49ers fans. So that's what I was smiling at, and I thought that was pretty funny.
Oh, was that kind of based on the Micah Parsons comments?
Alexa, turn off. Look for lots of clouds. Alexa, turn off. Yes, that's exactly what it was. So I called him. I don't call him Micah Parsons. I call him the Dallas podcaster. And I just think it's funny where the Dallas Cowboys are in this place where they're not going to compete. They're not built like that. That Micah Parsons finds time to point out what's going on with the 49ers. Like, dude, just look inward. Look at yourself. So,
all right, Jason, we have some breaking news, not necessarily in relation to the 49ers, but maybe. The Jets have released linebacker CJ Mosley.
Interesting.
Former captain of the defense, obviously played under Robert Saleh. 49ers have signed two linebackers. They brought back Curtis Robinson on a 1-year deal. They signed Luke Gifford. Would it make sense for CJ Mosley to come through? Because you would think that maybe a veteran linebacker would be a good spot with Fred Warner, D. Winters, Jalen Graham, and the two other linebackers I just mentioned.
Yeah, I kind of outlined this on Twitter. I don't think that the issues or the questions around D. Winters have to do with talent. It has to do with, can he sustain himself and be healthy the entire time? CJ Mosley is certainly better than Devondre Campbell. So there's a feather in your cap. And the 49ers are going to have to figure out this spot. I think D. Winters has a chance to get the first crack, but until he proves that he can stay on the field for multiple series, as we've seen, he's had difficulty with, that's going to be a question mark. So how does this work? Do you look in free agency? Now CJ Mosley is a potential fit, right? And it's not easy to replace what Dre Greenlaw brought to this team in terms of not only his skill set, but the tenacity and the attitude that he gave. So it's going to be interesting to figure out how they do this. Is it going to be strictly in the draft? I would love Jahad Campbell. I just don't think the 49ers would be able to take him at 11. They would have to try to move into the first round again, and high up to make sure you get him. So it's going to be interesting to figure out how they get this done. I just don't. There's no logical linebacker out there that you can say you feel great about replacing Dre Greenlaw with. So is it an option? Sure. Are the 49ers looking to allocate money to him? I don't know. And I think it depends on the amount of money. But the 49ers are going to have a tough time trying to figure out right now how to figure out replacing Dre Greenlaw's impact, not only skill set wise, but attitude.
No, I mean, I agree. Right now, I would say probably based on all the movement that the 49ers have done in the secondary and what we're looking at linebacker, the two biggest glaring spots right now on the team are defensive line and linebacker. Now they have depth, like we talked about. They have 5 linebackers currently on the roster, but it's that guy next to Fred Warner, like you mentioned, and no one's just coming in to replace Dre Greenlaw, but I don't know. It would be interesting to see. Clearly, CJ Mosley has spent a lot of time with Robert Saleh. Come in 1 year, maybe play next to Fred. See those two go out there and get after it. Two guys known for being leaders, playing out there. I mean, I would definitely be open to it, and I wouldn't mind it at all. I don't know. I mean, CJ's older, right? Is he in his 30s?
Yeah, for sure. And remember, they brought in Mosley, I want to say 2 years ago, which 2 years ago, that is a much better move. Now he's 2 years removed. How much juice does he have left? I've watched the Jets. He's not like completely washed, but I wouldn't say that I feel completely great.
Right, you're not bringing CJ Mosley in to be the future of the franchise, right? You're bringing him in.
That's a stopgap.
a stopgap while you can draft. And I think one of the things that we've noticed with the San Francisco 49ers is, at least under Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, the past, 7 years now, which it's crazy to say. They typically go into the draft with all the roster holes plugged with someone, right? Like, even when they went into the draft needing a kicker, they traded a 7th rounder to go get Zane Gonzalez, right? Just to make sure that they had a kicker on the roster. So they definitely need, I would say, one more prominent linebacker. But we'll see. We'll see what they do. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and the 49ers have shown that they're forward thinking, right? You think Hufanga is going to leave, we draft Malik Mustafa. You think Ward's going to leave, you draft Bernardo Green, right? Like, and you draft Pooney and all these guys. You think that Ayuk or Samuel's going to leave, you draft Ricky Pearsall. So again, that's why not many of these losses surprise me, because the 49ers have been prepping for this, and I think they've been forward thinking, and I think they're going to think that way. The problem is the on-field product in 2025. Will it suffer while you're waiting for someone to develop into the guy that you want to be next to Fred? And I think that's a little bit more, again, talking to the 49ers fans' fears about this season.
Yeah, so we'll see. I think when it comes to who are the San Francisco 49ers going to bring in, I think when you look at the 49ers defensive line, like, what do you see there? Like, because they released Leonard Floyd yesterday. It wasn't really much of a cap savings. He signed immediately. So far, the 3 starters that were on the 49ers defensive line signed pretty substantial deals in free agency. Hargrave and Malik Collins signed immediately the second the new league year opened up. So what do you see as the plan for the 49ers defensive line right now that is paper thin, at least in regards to guys that I think we believe can be substantial contributors as starters?
That's the thing, is you're kind of hoping for Mason Graham to fall to 11. I don't know if that's going to be the case, and I think the 49ers are going to have to be aggressive if that's their target. And if it's not, then a trade down is absolutely in the cards for them. It's got to be in the draft, clearly, right? And I do think that there is some guys that they'll use as rotational players, in terms of, I laid out the list yesterday. Obviously everyone is enamored with Azeez Ojulari. Struggles a little bit in run defense, but he's very young. Was the odd man out with the Giants because they did draft Kayvon Thibodeau. You have other guys, Josh Uche, who was traded to the Kansas City Chiefs. He's only 26 years old. That's somebody that maybe, if you feel like you can tap into that potential, you can go there. And then there's the guys that just are in their 30s that will be rotational guys. Matthew Judon, Darius Smith, even old buddy Charles Omenihu, right? I think all of it's going to be in the draft. And I think if you are going to see any additions in free agency, it's probably going to be one of those low-level, a little bit older guys that are going to be rotational guys. I think the 49ers kind of counted their chickens before they hatched by letting Leonard Floyd go, because they believed that Joey Bosa was on the way. But again, I'm just, speculating. I have no real, insight into that. But, the Joey Bosa thing doesn't bother me as much, just based on the fact that I wanted him to be here with a low-level contract and as a rotational pass rusher, right? Like a guy who just situationally is in there. I don't think anybody allocating any money to him would suspect that he's going to be healthy for 17 games just based on past history. So it's just going to have to be in the draft, and it's going to have to be a lot of guys that are either reclamation projects, people that they think Chris Kasurek can turn into guys, and then it'll be like the draft guys, and then you'll probably get yourself one of those like older, lower level, second, third wave tier guys. So it's not as sexy. The names aren't exactly eye-popping. Every player that's available right now as an edge has an issue, whether it's age or skill set or injury. But the 49ers are absolutely in the business right now of getting younger. So I think it's going to be a lot of picks on the defensive line moving forward.
Yeah, no, I agree. I kind of like the idea of Cleveland Farrell just because we know he's dependable at setting the edge in the run game. And I think with how the 49ers are going after this, you might have to piecemeal a defensive line together. Like you mentioned that Aziz Ojulari, he's a more of a pass rush specialist
Hmm.
right now. So you kind of build a DN through having multiple players play that role, right? And we know that defensive linemen, they rotate all the time. You stay fresh. So there's a world that exists where you can use an Ojulari in a pass rushing situation. You bring in a Cleveland Farrell or a Yetur Gross Matos as a base down defensive end to combat the run. And of course, you can switch it up a little bit, but there's not a lot of options. Like if you want to go older, Dante Fowler, who had 11
Dante
sacks last
Fowler's there.
year with the Washington Commanders. You also has Zadarius Smith, who still was pretty productive.
He was fine.
Uh,
It's funny is after Zadarius Smith joined the Lions, their pressure rate actually went up when Aiden Hutchinson went down. Now take that for whatever it's worth. At this point,
right,
and even somebody like Demarcus Lawrence would have been, a okay target, but he signed with Seattle as well too. So I think,
Seattle.
when
Yeah.
when you look around at the edge market, all of these guys have, for whatever reason, an issue, whether it's age, whether it's injury history, whether it's production, all of those things. And it's just the type of players that are going to be left around in these second and third and fourth waves. So not going to be sexy. And it's definitely going to be, somebody that everybody's going to have some sort of pushback on one way or another. But it's just the state of, where they are right now, the state of the franchise, as it were.
Well, that's a nice tie-in right there. Um, so I think kind of circling back to like the original question, we're not necessarily surprised by the departures. I think
Mhm.
every one of them we can rationalize. Like for me, the Kyle Juszczyk exit was a bit surprising just because I thought he was going to make it through. I didn't I understand why it happened. The 49ers, I think, over the last 3 to 4 seasons have used Kyle Juszczyk less and less and less and less. And they've also found less success in while he's in. And
Mhm.
so and they've already asked him for a pay cut. So the writing was on the wall. Like from that logical standpoint, I just thought he was going to clear and they were just going to let him ride out on the final year. But clearly they make that move. The Malik Collins one was also surprising just based on depth. I didn't think they were going to let him go due to the depth concerns, and I thought he was a pretty solid situational pass rusher as a
I
defensive
saw
tackle.
I saw a chart. I believe Brandon Thorne threw it out there that he had 27 generated quality pressures on his own, meaning not pressures that are based on someone else carrying a double team, just on his own. Yes, he's a pass rusher, and obviously he struggles in the run game. But I was a little surprised to see that as well too. I thought he was solid, but yeah.
So I was I just didn't expect it because they're so paper thin at the position, and now you have Jordan Elliott, you have Kevin Givens, you have
Mhm.
Evan Anderson, and Kalia Davis. So that means they're now going to have to look to the draft, right? Because even if you look at the free agent market right now, interior defensive tackle is paper thin with guys who you might be able to envision who could help you out. I'm looking at like Levi was a guy
He's
that I
gone.
thought could
Me
help.
too.
He signs.
I wrote an
Uh,
article about that as well too, that he was a fit. I one name I'll throw out real quick, and it hasn't necessarily happened yet. Dalvin Tomlinson, could be
right,
someone
because
who
he just
could,
got released the other day,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Dalvin Tomlinson could be somebody that'll fill that gap. Again, it's just the 49ers are chasing a defensive tackle that plays every single down, and I'm not certain that
They're
there's
not getting
anybody
that
out
in
there in
free
free
agency,
agency that right now that is that. Yeah.
right? Like you might get Calais Campbell on his last leg, but he's ring chasing. So I don't know if he sees with the 49ers and being like, I don't know if I want to go sign.
That makes sense
Maybe,
too. And I think that's
another time.
that's another aspect with the Joey Bosa thing is sure I want a bag, but who gives me a better chance at competing for a championship? The Buffalo Bills or the San Francisco 49ers, as a lifelong San Francisco 49er fan, I think he made the right decision if he's talking about going for a Super Bowl this year.
I wonder, do you think that the moves that the 49ers have made, and clearly, I'm sure as you've seen, there is a signal across the league, at least through the media, that, whoa, what are the 49ers doing? Like you hear Rich Eisen talking about it. You heard Ryan Clark today. Oh, if you're gonna rebuild, trade Christian McCaffrey. So like it is clearly a talking point right now that, oh, whoa, what is going on in San Francisco? What do you think about that? Do you think that could deter free agents from signing 1 year prove-its on, maybe a defense that looks like is going through a dramatic change?
No, and you know what? I want to phrase this without coming off abrasive, and that's hard for me because I'm so aggressive all the time when I speak and everything as well.
How dare you?
But yeah, I know. But so many of these national media guys seem to be like not tapped in with the 49ers at all. And the idea of like rage baiting about like how can they let all these guys walk? And it's like
Is that
literally
a Samuel Acho comment?
Yeah, Emmanuel Acho is the main one. Yeah,
Acho?
the main one that jumps out at first. Like and for me, it's if you've paid attention, even just a little bit, you would have already known that regardless of whatever John Lynch said at the combine or whatever Mike Silver story came out, these were all very much in the cards. And they were just like all it takes is for you to pay attention just a little bit. And that's my problem, right? Like it's so many people base their opinions around these guys. And whenever someone like you and I speak on Twitter, oh, do you know more than this guy? He used to play or he's an analyst. Yes, I do know more than Emmanuel Acho. I do know more than Chase Daniel. I do know more than some of these guys that are absolutely panicking over deals that we knew weren't going to get done. And if you just paid attention a little bit, you wouldn't even have those reactions. But as we know, the national media has built a 49ers-centric way of going about their content, meaning the best way to draw eyes and clicks onto your content is to say something about the 49ers because 49er fans will hold the line. How many people are just in the comments saying, you literally have no idea what you're talking about and you're yelling for no reason? That's usually my line. Like, that's my bag, is yelling for no reason. Right? But I have a problem with it because 49er fans are smart. And there's going to be this conception that is built around these national media guys and what they say because that's how they get their information rather than paying attention. So it's less about like caring about what they think and more just being concerned that you guys have a duty to do as analysts by just watching a little bit. And all you really have to do is just pay attention just a small amount. And the problem is you're not taking your job as seriously, in my opinion. And that is making you lose your credibility more and more.
I mean, I fully agree. I was fully of the mindset that last year was Deebo Samuel's last year before the season started. So expecting that, we saw writing on the wall with Charvarius instantly. We knew he was gone the second that exit interview, but we were alerted when they drafted Renardo Green, right? And then same thing with Aaron Banks. Why would the 49ers pay Aaron Banks what he got paid? Congratulations, Aaron. You just made top 3 interior offensive line money. Phenomenal. It just was never going to come from the 49ers.
Brad, they weren't going to give him market.
No.
Right? Like they're not going to pay a guard. They weren't going to pay a guard market, let alone what the Packers just paid him. So again, a departure that we knew what was going to happen because the 49ers are not in the business of paying guards. And that's a whole other discussion with the offensive line because I feel like obviously that's going to be somewhere how we steer into the conversation. But Banks was never going to get market, let alone that huge deal that the Green Bay Packers have. So look, I'm happy for you, Aaron, but I have to ask you, Green Bay Packers, what on earth are you thinking right here?
I don't know. I'm assuming they wanted his pass blocking ability because I think that's where he's best at is in pass pro, for the most part. But in the run game, man, it was so brutal. So uh, it was crazy. And I think it goes to show, Jason, like what we've talked about before. It's like offensive line, people people just have such a skewed version of what offensive line should be because they see the Trent Williams, they see the Penei Sewells, they see the Lane Johnsons, and they're like, shouldn't every offensive lineman be that good? And you're just like, those guys are unicorns. Like they are on a tier in rarefied air above everyone else. And then so when they see the Colton McKivitzes, they're like, this guy is awful. And to a certain extent, it's not like Colton McKivitz is a world beater by any stretch of the imagination, but boy, is he more than serviceable, especially at the price he's getting paid, which is what, I've been saying, and I've probably said it to you probably 4,000 times on this show. But the point is, it's like they will pay through the nose just for serviceable offensive line play. And we knew that the 49ers weren't going to be in that business of paying Aaron Banks. So again, not a surprise for me. I think we could kind of see early on that there was a real chance that Dre Greenlaw wasn't going to return. I think in a perfect world, you get him back on a 1-year prove it to be like, come back with Saleh, run it back one more year, healthy, put up a phenomenal season, and then we'll send you into the free market to go sign, a monster deal. He ends up getting, what was it, like 3 years, 35?
Who's that?
Which Dre Greenlaw?
Greenlaw, yeah, 3 for 30. Mm-hmm.
And so he signs a pretty substantial deal to go be LB1. And then I think Talanoa Hufanga was the same thing. You could see the writing on the wall. So, like I told you a couple minutes ago, the biggest surprises to me were guys that logically made sense to release, because I already expected all these guys to leave that we just named. It was the other guys that I'm like, oh, I think there's a chance they'll stick around based on depth and things like that. But you can still logically understand why those guys got released too. So to the point of the national media, I would say overreacting. Would you say? I think you kind of hit on it too. It's their job is to play on people's emotions in a certain fear mongering generates what is it, like clicks
and
views, yeah, which equates to revenue and clout, I guess you could say. I think those are the two things that come along with it. So again, I think we hit the nail on the head. You hit it early on. I think the issue that the fans have right now, or at least the fans who are well understanding of what we just talked about, it's the path forward. Who are we moving forward with? Not necessarily who we've moved on from, because we understand they were great players and they were great part of the 49ers culture, but we just knew that it wasn't going to be in the cards for the 49ers to pay everyone with Brock Purdy's impending contract, and all that stuff. So I guess maybe do you have any comments on anything I'd...
Oh, you just want to mute.
Our next super chat.
It went into your headphones. You got to put your mic back on. But yes, I lied earlier, and I want to walk something back. There was a really big surprise in one of the departures, and this is one that I was very surprised by: the Jalen Moore to Kansas City deal. And what's funny is Jalen Moore, when he was asked to step in for Trent Williams, was more than adequate. And I guess our first sign was when Ian Rappaport talked about there's going to be interest around Jalen Moore. And I was just like, wait a minute, man. Like, be quiet, Rappaport. Like, you're saying this out loud.
Like you told Ian, you're like, shut up, man.
Shut up, dude. I'm just like, please, man, be quiet. We're trying to sneak him back on his roster. And he had such a favorable reputation around the league that now he's protecting Patrick Mahomes' blind side. So I thought that was the biggest surprise. It's just the idea that the Chiefs were like, "Hey, right away, Jalen Moore." So I blame Ian Rappaport.
Jalen
There was
Moore,
no reason for you to
15.
say that out loud. Yeah, like come on, man. Like we
I'll
just sneak him back on the roster and keep him around. Like thanks a lot. But yeah.
Yeah, I'll say this. Good for offensive linemen. Get paid. Maybe it'll convince some of those athletes who think the only way they can make money on the defensive side, come on over, play offensive line. You might get the bag. So I think it sets up well for the future of offensive line because again, I think that's just really where it is. They need more athletes on the O line to be able to counteract these freaks on the defensive line. But again, to kind of close our thoughts on that, it is what it is, man. It's a new, would you say it's a new era in 49ers football?
Yes. And this is, again, the core itself is intact. And a lot of teams wish they had the level of players that the 49ers have as their core. But the surrounding players now are going to change drastically. And you're about to see a injection of youth that, the 49ers have not been accustomed to because they've missed in the drafts, because they've signed, free agents, proven talents, right? Like this is a new era because the 49ers are trying to follow the Rams and Eagles philosophy of, we'll fill in holes here and there. And obviously, signing Saquon Barkley doesn't line up with that, but everything else is going to be through the draft. How do you fix your secondary? Let's draft Cooper DeJean. That makes sense, right? Like that's, and automatically you're right back in the saddle. But unfortunately, the down year for the Eagles was a playoff berth in the wild card, not a 6-11 season, which obviously we can contextualize with injuries and all those things. But yeah, this is a new era because it's going to be a lot of young players and it's going to be a lot of rookies that no matter if Kyle Shanahan wants to or not, he's going to have to play just based on bodies. Like it's not up to you anymore, Kyle. You can't doghouse all of these rookies. You're going to have to play some of them just because you need bodies. So yeah, I think that's the most interesting part is now Kyle can't say you're in the doghouse, you're in the doghouse, you're in the no. Those guys got to play. So like let's slow down with that. So maybe Kyle's doghouse is the biggest loser in free agency, in my opinion.
Yeah, and to your point, it feels like that 49ers development program, it's going to have to get ramped up. They're going to have to play. They're going to have to play guys right away. And if the 49ers are going into free agency, or excuse me, into the draft with anything that resembles this defensive line, you could be looking at minimum 2 rookies starting defensive linemen potentially. So, hey, we'll see how it goes. But I would say like what it feels like is the 49ers are kind of emulating what the Rams did after they won the Super Bowl. Kind of like they had to go through a reset year but they bounced back quickly. They were able to get a high draft pick. They drafted Jared Verse. Yeah. You look at Braden Fisk, the 2 rounds back to back. And that was after they had landed on Kyren Williams, who's a phenomenal running back on a rookie wage scale. And they were just able to hit on, quality rookies who played a role. I think their center last year was a 6th round draft pick. Like it was a rookie. So I think that's kind of what they're emulating. But Tommy is saying trade Purdy, CMC, Fred, Kittle, and Bosa, which is he's basically saying rebuild everything.
Burn it all down. Well, yeah. I will say this about the Rams, right? The Rams doing that after a Super Bowl is much easier for their fan base to take.
Yes.
And I think you earn yourself grace when you raise the Lombardi. And that's the part that I think is the most frustrating to 49ers fans is to claw yourself to the top of that mountain, not get there, have the 6-11 season, and now here comes the reset. And that's why it's easier to take if you're a Rams fan. Now, they did bounce back pretty fast. And that's again when you have the quarterback in place. And I saw somebody in here say Buffalo did something similar. Yeah, you can do things like that when Josh Allen is your quarterback. you can do things when that guy is able to lift whoever else is there. So it's not a similar situation, in my opinion, with Buffalo. Like, yeah, you got rid of Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis and all these guys. That's cool. You still have Josh Allen, and as long as you have Josh Allen, you're going to be able to compete. So I think that's why it's not fair to compare the situation that the 49ers are in right now with Josh Allen, because they don't have a top 1, 2, 3 quarterback in the NFL. That's not a knock on Brock Purdy. That's just what it is. Like I don't think anybody in a rational mind believes that Brock Purdy is Josh Allen, but that's why you're able to do those things, because you have someone that can lift the offense and is the main attraction. So I think it's unfair to compare those two situations, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Trading Purdy, CMC, Fred, Kittle, and Bosa would be, I mean, you might as well trade Kyle Shanahan while you're at it. Like, unless you're really trying to just reset the whole roster and have Kyle kind of rebuild it. But it definitely does feel like there has been a bit of a shift in how the I guess ideology that goes into building a roster and that type of stuff. So we'll see. First of all, Tommy, I would like to say, how dare you? Jordan Elliott Jordan Elliott is a respected member of the San Francisco 49ers media. Put some respect on his name.
Splash cousin? That's insane.
Splash cousin? We talking about Splash cousin? What the heck?
Talking about guy Splash cousin? That's crazy. Shout out to Jordan Elliott of NBC, man. They'll never get me to hate you.
Never, ever. But of course, I'm assuming he means
the defensive line. Well,
the defensive lineman for the San Francisco 49ers.
And here's the thing: is when your reputation is a run defender, and you're still bad at that, I could understand why people. Yeah, I mean, look, let's just be frank, right? Jordan Elliott's not a pass rusher. He's supposed to be this run defender, and then you look at his PFF grade, and he's like a 47.7 run defender. And for all intents and purposes, looks like he might be starting if there was a game on Sunday, which thank God there's not. So I get the sentiment 100%. If you're known as something, please be good at that. Please be good at that part. Like we can live with the non-pass rushing, but if you're a run defender and you're getting blown off the ball and not a good run defender, then why are you here?
Right. Yeah. Right. I was actually expecting he would be the one that maybe got the axe. Not Malik, but I get.
Yeah.
They got rid of Malik because they were trying to get out of his contract.
Money.
Clearly.
Right.
Yeah, right. But it felt like from a on-field standpoint, I was like, you could build around Malik because he's a situational interior pass rusher. Like, dude, have you seen like some of just his individual reps and how he's won? Like, I'm like, oh snap!
He's got a bag. The thing is just
2 years, $20 million from the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, again, the 49ers have been sacrificing one skill set for the other at defensive tackle. Malik Collins, good pass rusher, not good in run defense. Javon Hargrave, good pass rusher, not good in run defense. Jordan Elliott, obviously the opposite. And the problem is that when you're mixing and matching, you don't have consistency. And that's the 49ers have been chasing the defensive tackle of their dreams since they let DeForest Buckner go. By the way, right. I think we found out that Adam Peters was heavy on the Javon Kinlaw train because of the bag that he gave him as well too. So I think if we're trying to figure out who did what and who was banging the table for who, I think we can firmly put it to bed that it was literally
Javon Kinlaw and Adam Peters guy confirmed is what you're saying?
Confirmed. Adam Peters, big Javon Kinlaw guy, and Ambry Thomas guy. Take that for what it's worth.
Did Ambry Thomas sign anywhere? Is he on a roster right now? Is he on the Commanders?
I could have swore that he was on the Colts practice squad. He didn't make it with a physical. I'm sure he's still probably out there.
Oh, that's right. And then he like flipped somewhere else. I can't remember exactly where that was. It was I don't know. I'm not any pretend like I remember.
He got picked up on the practice squad, and I remember the joke. It's like, oh, Samuel Womack, Ambry Thomas, like they're just, picking up all our guys and stuff like that. But I don't think he was able to make it because he failed his physical. So he might just be out there.
All right. Because we have a $2 donation, we have to entertain it.
We do have to read it.
100% behind trading CMC. Strong RB class. I don't disagree with the strong RB class comment. It definitely is. And the 49ers have a pretty full running back room right now. Isaac Orlando, Patrick Taylor, Israel Bonaconda behind Christian McCaffrey. What say you? Would you consider it?
It depends on what you're getting. Right now, if you're trading Christian McCaffrey, you're trading him for the absolute lowest value you can get. And
Yeah,
if you're that afraid of what his future contract's going to look like, that's fine. But I don't think that anybody's going to give you anything, because what the 49ers gave on top of what they gave him monetarily, you're going to wind up taking the lowest amount that you can take. And it's almost like, can you afford to do that right now? Jordan Mason's here on a second round tender. If somebody wants to sign him, they got to give a second round pick. I don't think that that's going to happen. So he's probably going to be here. Garendo's someone that they drafted. They have to stick with right at this point. Patrick Taylor is just that fail-safe guy that they have. And I still think the 49ers are going to be in the business in drafting a running back. If you're talking about getting younger as well, too, I've been fully on board with the idea of Trevor Etienne, because, again, the deal isn't necessarily, the draft pick is not necessarily looking for this season. It's for down the line. And if you're looking at getting younger, getting out of contract, then I understand the philosophy. I just think that if you're going to be selling Christian McCaffrey, you're selling him for pennies on the dollar right now, because people are already worried about his injury. Then you bring in the actual contract into it, the 49ers would just be taking like a net loss unless they just really want to get away from that contract. And I don't think that they do right now. But they would listen. If somebody blew them away with an offer, I'm sure they could probably say, you know what, we're going to make a move and we'll just roll with the guys that we got.
Yeah, I think it was Greg Papa today on KNBR who said that based on the 49ers' current situation, that they're willing to listen to anyone on a trade. He even went as far to name Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. So will they trade one of the faces of the franchise currently? I don't know. That remains to be seen. But it seems like the 49ers are willing to shake things up. And, if you've already started, is there a thought process that says, oh, well, let's just go all in and do full reset? I don't know. That remains to be seen. But I agree with you. It's like it's the same concept to me of trading Brandon Ayuk. To trade Brandon Ayuk, you're getting out of his contract, right? Mm-hmm. You'd be trying to get out of the 4 years, $110 million that remains. Mm-hmm. You're probably moving him for a 7th round draft pick. I don't even know. I don't even know what type of compensation you'd get in return. It's almost like you would have to give a team a draft pick to take on Brandon Ayuk, who's coming off a pretty devastating knee injury, mm-hmm. right? And the 4-year, $110 million contract. So it's in the same thought process of if you'd be trading CMC, you just gave him a raise last year, and are you going to get max value for that? Are you going to, like you mentioned, someone has to take on his contract. It's are you getting return on your investment that you had hoped for? Would you get, anything equal to what you got in the trade that got him here? I don't know, probably not. So depending on how the medical goes through, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I would say the running back to me that's most likely to get traded is Jordan Mason, because if he signs his tender, and it's, I think, 5.1 million or 5.3, somewhere in that range, the 49ers can still trade him, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say a team doesn't offer him a contract, and, because as we know, if they do, 49ers have the option to match. If they don't match, they would get a 2nd round draft pick for the team who signed him, which I think we both understand. A 2nd round pick and paying him whatever contract that might be, maybe not. But if you could get him at that cost-controlled year, maybe come in with a mm-hmm. 3rd or something like that, that seems maybe more reasonable. I mean, you think about it, I know some 3rd round running backs that have gone in the past, so it's no guarantee that you're going to hit on a 3rd round running back. So getting Jordan Mason for a 3rd, that seems like pretty darn good value.
Undrafted
for
free
another
agent?
Yeah, and for the 49ers, you talk about phenomenal return on in investment. Like
Mhm.
if you're putting your prudent businessman hat on where you're just looking for ROI on everything, like how do we flip and get value? That's a perfect player to flip for some value if that's what you were looking for.
And it's clear the 49ers don't love Jordan Mason as much as we do.
No, they don't. I don't get it, man. I was looking at his usage, and it's like 20 carries, 20 carries, 20
Yeah.
carries, 20 carries, 10 carries, 10 carries, 4 carries, 3
Yeah.
carries, 2 carries. I
So,
was like, what
so
happened?
Kyle Shanahan gets Christian McCaffrey back, and Jordan Mason is in the top 5 in rushing yards. And Christian McCaffrey comes back and he says, "Hey Mason, look how high you are on the rushing yards. Take a seat. We're not, like it's just it's we 49er fans like Jordan Mason more than the 49ers like Jordan Mason. And
Agreed.
it's just it's if that's how you feel, then getting any sort of draft compensation for a undrafted free agent is good business. It's the same thing with Jeff Wilson. That's just good business. And if you're not going to use him that way, if you're not in love with him in that way, you traded up for Isaac Guerrero,
Yeah.
then it just
And it's a
might be
good running
good
back
business.
class.
Yeah, and it's a deep running back class as well too. So for me, I'm going off the 49ers actions because wouldn't it have made sense that when Christian McCaffrey came back to not ramp him up to like that high level
Right.
and try to at least take a few carries here and there? That part, it never really jived with me. And then what's funny is when like they finally started using him again in the Buffalo game and it looked like he was about to take over, season over, right? And I think that was just kind of where the season really came apart. So
Yeah, but it does kind of give you a glimmer of hope that he'll be able to be fine. I think it's been reported that I think as of right now, fully healthy. And shout out to him and his wife, expecting their first child. So congrats to them. But I think you got to trade Jordan. You hit the nail on the head. The 49ers don't seem that in love with him, so they're definitely not going to pay him when he becomes an unrestricted free agent next year. So trade him now. Get a draft pick. You clearly need them. There's plenty of holes to fill on this roster, and as it currently stands right now, they're running back. They've got 4 running backs that aren't too bad. I like the Patrick Taylor signing, not because it's a big move, but I just like Patrick Taylor. I think he's
it's a huge move, Brad. We're back.
we're
Plan the
so
parade.
bad.
Plan the
We're
parade.
so bad. Tommy wants to trade everyone so that we could tank for Arch Manning. Thoughts, reaction?
Nah. That's all I got. It's nah. It's just nah.
Yeah, I don't agree. That it's I don't think. Do you think tanking is real in the NFL?
No, I think we've talked about that. I think we've absolutely talked about that.
We have talked about that too.
Players have to put on film what they can do. If you're purposely throwing games and losing games, you're not going to get signed by anybody else. Coaches that lose games on purpose will never end up, getting signed again. So no, and if you're bad enough, of a football team, you don't have to try to tank. You're just gonna eventually lose football games. So,
and I think Arch too. He's just a concept right now. Like he hasn't played enough to really be able to. I think you see the elements of like, oh, he could be a really good quarterback, but he hasn't. Let him at least have a full season before we talk about tanking for a complete, all things considered, unknown player. Like, yeah, he very well could be generational, but he hasn't proven that just yet. So we'll have to see there. KJ says Davante Adams to the Rams. Did the 49ers just lose their grip on the NFC with Puka, Adams, Atwell, and Williams? Is LA the real threat? Let me know. I'm assuming we both probably have a similar opinion on this. I'll let you take it first.
What grip on the NFC did the 49ers really have? Unless you're talking about the division itself.
I think they lost that last year.
Yeah, I think if there was a grip on it, you know, the 49ers hands were full of grease and they were trying to do a pull-up, like, you know, like that, like that's the grip that they had.
Figuratively enough, the grip on the NFC West slipped through Deebo Samuel's hands.
Kudos.
Sorry.
I'll give you that. Kudos. I'll
Sorry.
give you that.
Yeah.
If we're talking about the NFC West, then I think, yeah, for sure. You have to look at the Rams as the favorite, right? Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua, as long as you have Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay's a very good coach. They've retooled that defense. I
I'm a
think
big
for
Kyler
sure.
Murray guy.
Yeah, I think if we're taking stock right now and looking at the two teams, yeah, it's probably those two, but it would probably be the edge to the Rams because they were so good already, and they literally, who could argue that they didn't get better with Devontae Adams? So for me, you know, Seattle's obviously tearing things down and starting over. The Cardinals are the Cardinals, not necessarily worried about them. But if we're talking about the two teams, it would be these two. But if you have to give the edge, I think today you have to give the Rams the edge clearly because they were a team that was minutes away from possibly knocking off the Philadelphia Eagles. They add Devontae Adams, and as long as you have Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay, you're always going to be involved. So yeah, I mean, I'm not. I don't even really think this is a hot take.
I don't think so either. I think if we were to put it into like a tiered ranking, it's the Rams and then 49ers, Seattle, and Arizona, kind of in the middle ground of like trying to figure out like who are we, what are we, and where are we going. And then it's like the Rams, like we talked about earlier, they already went through this process that seemingly all three of these teams are going through, which is a bit of a reset, trying to, you know, try to figure out what their true future is. Like, I think Arizona's really trying to figure out, is Kyler our quarterback of the future? Like, they paid him and they're committed to him, but do we see him as their quarterback in 2 years from now? Or are they looking to maybe make a shift? We'll have to see. But yeah, a lot of changes, at least with the 49ers and Seattle Seahawks right now. Yeah, like we said, we'll see what happens with AZ, but it's definitely right now, unfortunately, the Rams division. And it could very well still be the 49ers, but you can't go 6-11 and get swept by the Rams and say we still got the grip on the NFC. They should have. Jason, I said the identity. You know, we talk about it every year, right? Who is the identity of this team early on? The woulda, coulda, shoulda 49ers. That's what their identity was. They coulda, shoulda, woulda beat the Rams in both games if they just executed and played ball. And they didn't, and they lost. They did that against the Seattle Seahawks, let Geno Smith come down the field, score, win that game. They lost. Arizona, they lost. Woulda, coulda, should have been in the playoffs, could have been in the playoffs, but they dropped it. They dropped the ball. And that is currently the identity, at least for the 2024 49ers. And I think that was one of the hardest things to watch, is that I think there is a world that exists where they could have been a lot better than what they were, but they weren't. You are what your record says you are, right? Is the saying goes.
Yeah, and that's what's frustrating about the last season is if the 49ers were getting blown off the field by so many people, you know, then it's like, okay, you know, you can live with that. But the 49ers had an opportunity in that Rams game if their special teams just played a little bit better. Maybe Ronnie Bell catches that pass, you know, and then you have another game where you hold the 49ers defense holds no touchdowns allowed, 12 points. You should win those games. Then Arizona is the last second thing. If the 49ers were just getting completely outclassed, you would feel better about it. But all of those losses are frustrating because you can point to one or two moments in which if the 49ers simply execute, they probably walk away with victories. Whatever happens in the playoffs and how that goes. But yeah, you know, it's a little bit tough when it comes to how you can contextualize those losses.
Absolutely. And we still have 2 super chats in sequential order. But when you drop a banger,
like, oh my goodness,
Trey Fox dropping a band. Let's go. He says 2023 was the last chance for the past core to get it done. I knew as soon as we choked the Super Bowl, now we have to rebuild. We're not making the Super Bowl at Levi's. 2026 could be the year, but it depends on how they draft.
Good thing
Good
is,
good thing is we'll have a ton of cap space by then.
first of all, Great Fox, thank you for your generosity, and you've always been a proud supporter of the channel as well too. I appreciate you. This is very generous, and yeah,
Heck
I
yeah,
think
round of applause for Gray
yeah,
Fox in the chat.
absolutely, and I think that's how we all felt when that Super Bowl was over. Is it'll never line up that way ever again.
Yep.
You'll never have an offense that's going to be that efficient, that was just blowing people off the field, having the opportunity, getting the first round bye, winning 2 games in comeback fashion to make the Super Bowl, having that lead, being in that position. And I do think a lot of the fallout from that is a lot of people being mentally tired, spent, and then you start to rationalize how hard it is to do that again. Yes, the Kansas City Chiefs are in it every single year, but that's not the rule, that's the exception. And that's what makes it so impressive that they're in it. And now the Eagles have been in it 2 out of the last 3 years. It's not easy. And I just think what made that Super Bowl loss so backbreaking is they'll never get a look at a better opportunity right there. And that's the hard part for 49ers fans to rationalize is how many times will you get a better look at this than that season? And how much of the stars align? Because let's face it, winning the Super Bowl, it's not always the best team that wins it. It's the team that has injury luck. That's what the 49ers had on their side. The first round bye, all of those things. Everything lined up for the 49ers. And then when it doesn't happen, it's deflating. It's tough. So again, even if this was the plan 2 years down the line, like it is right now where there's cost cutting, it's easier to digest because you finished with the Lombardi. The frustration is pent up because of how close you got. And this is coming from the top. Jed York is feeling it. We've given you like essentially a blank check for you guys to do what you want. We unfortunately haven't gotten it done. So now we're going to reset. And this reset would be easier to take if the 49ers finished the job that year. But again, thank you, Great Fox. That is super generous of you. In this economy, I can't believe that you would send something like that. But thank you so much, man. A proud supporter of the channel from day one. Really appreciate you. Love the community that we built. Let's get these likes up. If you're in here, just shoot a like on there as well too. Let's get these likes all the way up.
Absolutely. Big shout out to Gray Fox. That is I haven't seen one of those red boxes
Woo.
in a while. So kudos to him. Make sure you shout him out in the chat. And again, you guys help all of us continue to do what we do. And to kind of piggyback on pretty much what you said, dude, I remember being in that stadium. What is it, Allegiant Stadium? Watching, the 40 field goal to go up 3 points in OT, and just watching from the start of that drive, I'm like, this is going to determine our whole year. This is one of the conversations that I'm having as I'm watching, Patrick Mahomes drive down the field, because I'm like, man, if we lose this, like, how do you recover, right? Like, how do you recover? Because it's right here in front of us. And like you mentioned, we already know from the 2019 Super Bowl just how difficult it is to get to that point to be in position to win. So 100%, I think any rational thinking person who can look ahead and project out knew that we were in for it after they lost that Super Bowl. So it's tough, man.
Think about this, Brad. We are fans and content creators.
Right.
And I'll never forget the feeling because Andrew and I were hosting the Super Bowl party in Cantina right across the street from Oracle Park. And when we got off the air with Bleacher Report, I felt emotionally spent. Like I had gone through it the entire season. There were a lot of people in that place that were shedding thug tears.
Yeah.
Because you realized in that moment how close you were and how hard it is to get back there. And will you ever get a look at it that close? I didn't know we were going to be depressed today. My therapy session was supposed to be at 8:30 Eastern time, but I guess it's now 7:30 Eastern time. I've got a lot of things to talk about with my therapist in a little while, and
I
she's
guess
going to
the
say,
49ers going to make the
yeah, she's gonna say, "What does this have to do with yourself? You're talking about a football team," and I'll be like, "Well, this is this is literally the root of my anxiety and the root
this
of my of
this is why I feel dead inside. None
this
of
is
my
why I don't
childhood
feel
trauma.
anything."
It's
So when
the
people tell me like, "How's you feeling?" I don't feel anything. I don't feel a thing.
I
I
feel
have a heart
nothing.
of stone.
This is why we're numb on
Mhm.
the inside, Jason. That's so funny. But again, shout out to Gray
Thank you
Fox. Shout out
again,
to
Gray Fox. Thank you
everyone
again, buddy.
who's sending super chats. I'm going to get back into the natural order of super chats. So Rock says, what about a reunion with CJ Mosley and Sala? We already touched on that a little bit. I personally wouldn't. I'd be down for it for like a 1 year. But I did see that he, I guess, was dealing with a lot of injury last year. So that's another element. You just have to make sure his injury's clear. But they're gonna have to sign. I do believe a veteran, kind of a more veteran linebacker, and he's a guy that I'm not worried about quitting on the team. He might be on the back nine of his career. I wouldn't be opposed to it.
I think as long as you set the correct expectation for a signing of CJ Mosley, if you're expecting
Fair,
that guy from the Baltimore Ravens or even the first year with the Jets, you're going to have a tough time.
fair.
If you're
I think that's very
expecting
fair.
a little bit of stability, just veteran presence, he does have injury issues, which means he'll fit right in with the 49ers. I think if you literally set your expectations in the correct way, you can't get let down. And I think that's the way you should be viewing all of these signings through whatever lens. And I think that's the way you should. I'm not certain if the 49ers would be in on this. I think when we went through the linebacker, problem with the 49ers is D Winters is obviously talented, but he has a tough time staying on the field. I think that's, and Tatum Batum is somebody they're happy with, but are you sure? Same thing with Curtis Robinson. It's hard for me going back in the past with the 49ers and the way they enjoy their stability with setting their watch to certain players to not at least entertain the idea. But as long as you view the signing with the proper scope, then it won't come off as disappointing. If you think you're getting CJ Mosley from the Baltimore Ravens, that's where you're going to find your issue. If you at least contextualize it and say, this is a guy who is he's been around the block and he knows Robert Saleh, and he'll be just stable and able-bodied, then I think then you really can't get let down by that.
Yeah, and I would also have more confidence in the move, considering the fact that Robert Saul was just with him, so
Mhm.
he probably has the most inside knowledge into where CJ is and what his expectation is for him. So if Salah green lights it, that would again give me more confidence that would be a decent move. If not, it's again they can just find someone else. Blaze says, general thought on pick 11 trade or use. What do you think?
If it's Mason Graham at 11, use. If it's not, and you're not comfortable with one of those guys, trade back. Because then that would be the scenario where I could see the 49ers getting Jahad Campbell. I don't know if they're comfortable with him at 11, but if you trade back and you get some more draft capital, you can get Fred Warner's running mate. And then that's a need right off the bat that's taken. And we don't have to worry about CJ Mosley at this point because you just let the young man play. He's the consensus linebacker one. I don't really think there's much debate when it comes to that. But if it's not Mason Graham at 11, I could certainly see the 49ers trading out of there. I think that's the way that I'm rationalizing it right now. And I think I had this thought process before free agency. I think that it would be a slam dunk for Graham to be there at 11. But if he's not, then let somebody jump up because they may want a Kelvin Banks or something like that. You trade back.
Absolutely. I'm of the same mindset. If one of your blue chip guys are there on your board, you absolutely take them because you are going to view them as plug and play day one starter and could be an instant impact. So absolutely you take that player. But if you are on the clock and you're looking at your board and you're like, we could get the same caliber of player, maybe a different name, but the same caliber based on our tier system, then let's hop back. And the 49ers need a lot of players and a lot of bodies, apparently. So they hop back, stack a couple, more top 100 picks. Top 100, or dare I even say that, maybe more top 80 is a good spot to live in. You'll still be able to find some good players in, I would probably say, 80 to 125. Easily. Or even further on in the draft. But this is a great draft to get guys in that early 75. So if you could pick up two picks, in the top 75 by a small jump back or trade back, like grab a additional second and a third, shoot, I would absolutely consider that. Because there's going to be some good players in the second round, and if you can double up, then absolutely, especially if you need defensive tackles.
Right.
So, I would definitely consider both options, but only I'm not trading back just to trade back. That it has to make sense.
Right, like you trade back if you have a feeling that you can get Jahad Campbell. I don't know if they feel comfortable taking a linebacker with pick 11. I'm not certain that that's going to be their philosophy, right? Like I think they're there at 11 for a defensive tackle, or again, and then
or
when you look at
you can get like Walter Nolan at like pick 15 opposed to 11.
That's the thing too as well. And what we have to remember about the buzz on some of these players, whether it's true or not, this is just you have to add this into the conversation. Character concerns on James Pierce, Walter Nolan.
Yes.
And Mike Green is something that it's a little bit. So from what I heard at the combine, the Nolan and Pierce thing, that was character concerns from a football standpoint. The Mike Green thing is with the law, and things that have happened.
Do you know what the Mike Green thing is?
It's two SA cases. We can't say it on because and that he's completely off the board. Like, there's no shot that he's on the board for the 49ers.
I did not know that.
Yeah, with Nolan and Pierce, it's
attitude.
Character concerns with their interviews. It's attitude. It's the same thing they were saying about Luther Burden. How much of that is just being put out there to make guys fall? I don't know. Again, this is just what is being said about them.
Okay. All right.
So
well, I think the tail or the warning is George Pickens.
Yeah.
Phenomenal talent. Arguably one of the more talented wide receivers in the league. But that is where the internal messes with the external, right? It's hard to get Pickens to lock in. It's hard to get Pickens to do something that he hasn't convinced himself to do. Like, it's hard for him to buy in because of his own personal ego or whatever. So if that's what Pierce and Nolan are going through, because Nolan, I think, was one of the top high school prospects coming out. Probably a lot of stuff came with that. Pierce playing at Tennessee, situations with that. So, but I don't know. That just doesn't seem like the 49ers. That doesn't seem like the 49ers MO.
And again, who knows what's true? Who knows what's not? And that's the thing that we always talk about. All we have to go off of is the tape. We're not in these interview processes with these guys, right? And it's the same thing that they were saying about Kayvon Thibodeau during his draft, is that he was just bombing his interviews. And again, there's so many people that their jobs are on the line because of the high investment in these picks. And it's a results-driven business. It's, can I trust you to come into my building and not poison your teammates and work hard? And that's the part, again, what's the saying? Hardest thing to scout is not the player, it's the person. And there's players that don't have the physical gifts of some players, but they're going to be workers and they're going to be conducive to the type of culture you're trying to build. And then it's the other way around. Now it's a give and take situation, right? Because 53 men, they can't all be choir boys, right? As long as it's not harming other people, in any way. If they're harming people, then don't bring them in. I completely understand that. If they're doing terrible things and getting arrested, don't bring them in. But you need a little bit of edge, right? So is that attitude something that you figure out in the interview process, where it's like, okay, this guy's got a little edge, he's got a little fire to him, a little pop. Sometimes you need that. And I think that's the balance that you have to strike. Like, I don't know how to do it. And I think that's what is the hardest part for evaluators. And I think that's the part that we're missing because we're just going off tape. When we watch the tape, we're just like, how could they not look at this guy and say, why is he here? It's, you haven't been in the room with him. You don't know if he's an absolute jerk. I still go back to the story, and maybe this isn't the best story because of the name that I'm going to throw out. The first Senior Bowl that I covered, Matt Rule talked immediately about he got into an elevator 30 seconds with a prospect, a high up prospect. And he said after 30 seconds being in that elevator with them, he walked out. He immediately looked at his evaluators and said, he's off our board. I don't know what you could do or say in 30 seconds that completely like rip everything up.
It had to be Kadarius Toney.
Maybe, you know, like that's, but again, like it's, we look at the tape and did he fart in the elevator is crazy. It's you look at the tape and we're enamored with that. But the hardest thing is we're not in the room with those guys. And how do you evaluate the player, his fit for the culture, that type of thing?
Yeah, 100%. And I had that same draft from the Senior Bowl. I was so high on Kadarius Toney. It took one podcast interview, and I said, this guy is a head case. I am out. His talent, even though tantalizing, was not worth what I would imagine would come. And he's not even on a team right now, which shouldn't be the case based on how talented he is. First of all, shout out to
Queen KB.
What's going on?
I can hear
there we go. Queen B for the $5 super chat. Appreciate it. I'm gonna get to Daza, but I want to get to this one because it's kind of in line with what we were talking about. Then I'll get back to Daza. With this roster, would you trade out of the first? Trading out of the first would be a substantial drop back. I don't even.
Uh-oh. Did we lose Brad?
You there?
There? I'm here.
Okay. I got two circles of death, so I just wanted to make sure we were back. McDonald's Wi-Fi is kicking in. For the 49ers to trade out of the first, I feel like it would have to be a two trade scenario. They would have to drop back to mid or early 20s and then drop back again, because for a team to go up, it would have to be a substantial move, or it would have to be a big time player that they would trade for, that they would just trade the first out, if that makes sense. So I think trading out of the first would actually be kind of difficult to do.
That's a huge risk.
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about rebuilding this roster. That's a huge risk. Now, risk is fine if the reward is probable. I think if you're talking about rebuilding this roster, you have to take swings in the first round, because we all know the hit probability is, let's say, 50% in a good year. That means 16 out of 32 teams are going to have players that are hits on varying levels, which is hits, all pros, pro bowlers, starters, those things. I think the 49ers, if they're really serious about building through the draft, you still have to take a swing in the first round because of the likelihood of you hitting on the first round. Now, I can hear the comments coming in before they come in. Well, they haven't been successful in the first round for a long time. Okay. So getting out of the first round based on history could block your blessing, because there could be a player there that can really help you. I don't want them to stop swinging in the first round. So for me, I just have a tough time. If you're telling me that you want to get better in the draft, if you're telling me that you need young, cheap talent, moving out of the first round seems like you're taking a very high risk, and you better be sure that the guys that you're going to get in the later rounds for whatever the trade up is, that they hit, and you're just putting more pressure on yourself.
Well said. I agree. Let's see. That gets us to Daza. Niners are doing what the Bills did, but they have Josh Allen. Same with the Rams, who have Stafford, and also they've drafted better than us. So what do you think Daza is alluding to? I think you kind of hit on this a little
That's
earlier.
exactly what I was saying. Is correlating what the Buffalo Bills did to what the San Francisco 49ers are doing right now is an unfair comparison. Yes, they lost Stephon Diggs, and yes, they lost Gabe Davis, but you have Josh Allen. Josh Allen's the offense. It doesn't matter, right? Like the idea that you can say, hey, the Buffalo Bills did it leaves out the important context that they have Josh Allen. And you can do things like that when you have Josh Allen. Because as we saw, they got as close as they did, and they were throwing the football to who? Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, all these guys, because it's Josh Allen's show. You can take those risks and those chances, especially knowing that you were going to have to pay this man a lot of money. By the way, thank you, Buffalo, for the average annual value of only being $55 million because you just helped Brock Purdy. And I never would have thought that a contract would have helped. But yeah, it's helped so much. But for me, you can't correlate the two because it's not fair to the situation because they have a top 1, 2, 3 quarterback. And you can make those choices. Hey, Stephon Diggs, we're going to move on from you, but you still have Josh. And as long as Josh is there, that's going to be your reason for hopefulness and that you're going to win playoff games and be deep in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think hopefully, Christian McCaffrey being there, being healthy would help that situation. But I mean, if you really look at it, are they that worse off than they were last year? I mean, we expect Ricky Pearsall to be better. Juwan Jennings has potential to even have a better season. Hopefully, Brandon Ayuk can return to form. But if you bring George Kittle back, you got a healthy CMC. And you bring in Demarcus Robinson. I still like the Isaiah Hodgins signing from at the end of the year.
I forgot about him. That's a good call.
Their offense really isn't that dramatically different. So I think we're looking at this in such a dire situation because of what we talked about at the very beginning. People leaving, not a lot coming in. But that's more so relegated to the defense. The defense has a lot more holes currently than the perceived holes on the offense. And so,
well, I think the hesitance, Brad, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think the hesitance, Brad, is there's 2 players on the 49ers offense that come with a qualifier. If CMC is healthy and effective like we know him, and if Brandon Ayuk returns to form following a devastating injury, right? This isn't your run-of-the-mill ACL injury, which many people bounce back from. It's all the COs, ACL, MCL, PCL. So I think the hesitance isn't necessarily the names. It's the qualifiers that you have to put going into this season. How much more can Christian McCaffrey give? How much tread does he have on the tire that's left? If he is that guy that he was from 2 years ago, then you have no worry. But are you certain that that's what that is? If Brandon Ayuk can return to form, then you feel really good about what you have offensively. But that's the fear. That's the hesitance, right? Because George Kittle is still that guy. Juwan Jennings has shown that when you give him more opportunities, look what you have. You're happy about Ricky Pearsall's development at the end of the year. But setting your watch to Christian McCaffrey from 2 years ago and Brandon Ayuk from 2 years ago is where I think some people get a little hesitant. And I don't necessarily blame them. I'm a naturally optimistic person, so I want to believe that the injury to Christian McCaffrey in Buffalo was a little bit of a blessing in disguise because now you're not putting any wear and tear on those Achilles, and you can take a long time to get back. Might have been a blessing in disguise. And then with the Brandon Ayuk thing, I'd love to think that he's very young and bounce back, but it's not something that you can set your watch to. And I think that's where a lot of people are talking about the hesitance that they have to just say, hey, these are all good names, but the qualifiers of if they return to their previous form is the part that has a little bit of impact on 49ers fans.
Of course. And I would also imagine that the 49ers would go after a wide receiver in the draft as well. Like,
yeah.
I don't think they just
go
into the season.
Check back.
Bring him in. Ariel says, would you trade up for Membo?
What an excellent picture, by the way. I just want to make sure we shout out to Ariel Mod on the channel as well too. Excellent picture. There's
36 months as a member.
yes,
That's impressive.
yes, yeah.
That is very impressive.
So Ariel, here's the thing: is how far are we talking? Because I think, given the way that the New England Patriots have spent this offseason, they've got their defensive players now. They're spending. They're under the guise of the rookie contract. I don't know if Membo makes it past them at 4. Are the 49ers prepared to go from 11 to 4?
Do this as Membo / Campbell.
Okay. Would you trade up for Membo or Campbell? Membo, I think, is for the streets, unfortunately, after that performance. And then you pop on the tape and the guy's a stone wall as well, too. I think, again, he's not going to fall out. I'd be shocked if the Patriots passed on him, given how they want to protect Drake May. Campbell might be there at 11 if there's a weird draft shakeup. And we have one every single year where we just see guys fall. So he might be there at 11. So you could just play the board and wait. But I don't think that they'll be able to move up to 4th if that's where I think he's going to go to the Patriots.
So draft order, it's Tennessee. Is Tennessee going Abdul or Ward?
I would say Cam Ward, just based on the idea of new general manager. He's not tied to Will Levis. Yes, you're rebuilding. You have a new stadium that you're going to open. How do you generate excitement for the Tennessee Titans? Is by bringing in a guy that you believe is a franchise quarterback. Do I believe that? I don't know. I don't have to think about that because the 49ers are not in the business of getting Cam Ward. But I think if you're Tennessee and you're talking about the potential for your new stadium and you're trying to generate interest with the Titans, then why wouldn't it be him?
Right. So I think it would be a good guess that Cam Ward, Abdul Carter are going to be 1 and 2. Would you say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then 3, you could say the Giants would go Shedeur, Travis Hunter, maybe.
Travis Hunter.
Hunter.
What position is Travis Hunter going to play? He scares me as if you want to throw this into a dynasty conversation, I don't know how to attack him as a dynasty player. Is he going to be a cornerback or is he going to be a wide receiver?
I'll let somebody else deal with that.
Exactly.
That's it. That's going to be somebody else's problem. I don't foresee that I'll have a lot of Travis Hunter shares unless he falls to me. I'm not moving up actively for Travis Hunter either. I think he's a phenomenal player, but I'm going to let somebody else deal with that. I'm going to take I'll take Ted McMillan and all the guys that I know for a fact are going to play one position, as opposed 100%. to swinging on something that has a little bit of variability like that. So, Shedeur, maybe Travis Hunter, and then 4, it just feels like a spot for Membo right there because of the way New England has just been free spending because they have all this cap space and they have the rookie contract. I just see him going there. And then everything else, from there, obviously Jacksonville, Las Vegas, Vegas would be a prime spot for Shedeur at 6 if he's there. The Jets, who knows what they're thinking. Obviously, our Prince Justin Fields just got paid by them. So that was pretty cool. I'm excited to be able to watch him play football over here close to my house. And then Carolina will probably be in the business of an edge rusher. New Orleans, it depends on what they're valuing at that point. I don't know if they go crazy and there's obviously no quarterback I would take there if they're not Cam or Shedeur.
They got 3 quarterbacks now. They got Carr playing on $40 million. They have Rattler and Jake Haener's probably for the streets eventually. But I don't know. It'd be interesting to see them go quarterback this year. I think Chicago's good on O-line.
They are.
New Orleans could be an O-line spot. So maybe you would have to jump into this range
for Membo.
Get Membo and or Campbell if you don't think they're going to make it past New Orleans, or you gamble and you say, all right, well, we'll see where they're going to go and just see where it falls. Do you think Gentry goes in this round?
I was going to say, you got to hope that Chicago takes Ashton Gentry.
Gentry could go to Chicago. Yeah. Tyler Warren. Could Tyler Warren go to Carolina? Could he go
Tyler Warren could go to the Jets.
Could go to the Jets. this thing is tripping out with the ads. Loveland has been skyrocketing. He's number 6 on Daniel Jeremiah's top 50, along with Jade Barron, who's jumped up to number 8. So Will Campbell being at 9. However, Cam Ward is at 10. Membo's at 11. Jahad Campbell's at 12. Will Johnson, your boy, at 13.
Yeah, he's my boy, but now I'm officially color me concerned.
I just saw for the first time that Matthew Golden has jumped Tet McMillan in the rankings.
That's
Golden's
fair.
One of the biggest risers in the whole draft right now.
That's
crazy.
fair. But again, like when we were talking about the wide receiver class, the wide receiver class isn't top heavy. And I feel the values are going to be later on for the wide receivers, like Jaden Pickens, Jalen Noel, Jack Beck. Like I'm going to continue to talk about these guys.
It feels like it's going to be that top heavy core, and then it's going to be like not a lot of wide receivers maybe for a while.
I wouldn't be shocked if some of the guys that get taken later on outproduce some of the guys that get taken earlier on in this draft. Right. So I think the real wide receiver class is in the later rounds. Not later, but like, second, third, fourth round. Did something happen? My phone has been blowing up. Okay, no, forget it. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. So it's fascinating, bro. I think because it's not a top heavy class necessarily, it lends itself to the rankings kind of being per team. Like the teams are real. Like this strikes me as a draft where like we're gonna do all this time of talking about rankings and where guys should go, and the draft comes around and we're like, oh, we didn't expect him to go there, or we didn't expect this guy to fall. So it's going to be really interesting. But being at 11, they're right there on the fringe. DJ still has Mason Graham at 4. Sticking with Genty at 3, hasn't moved off of him. So it'll be interesting. Jalen Walker is a very interesting prospect for the fact that DJ's got him ranked at 7, and PFF has him out of the first round entirely. So fascinating draft. So we'll see. You want Jahad Campbell, right?
I would love Jahad Campbell. I think that's the way that you replace Dre Greenlaw. Obviously, as the linebacker 1, there's going to be a lot of competition for him. When people ask me who's your draft crush at linebacker, I say Jahad Campbell. I feel like I'm taking the easy way out. But I would love that, and you're talking about young, cheap, cost-efficient talent. Jahad Campbell's a slam dunk. Do the 49ers think he's a slam dunk at 11? I would probably say no. And that's why he would be the perfect trade target if you're going to trade back. If you're going to trade back, you have to be sure that you can get your hands on Jahad Campbell.
What I would do is I would maybe go a different route, but that's because I have an infatuation with Cal linebacker Teddy Buchanan. So
a lot of people
I would try to go 3rd, 4th at Teddy, because although I do see what Jahad Campbell brings to the table, like he definitely has pretty amazing skill set, I still feel like you could get a high caliber or high quality linebacker in a guy like Teddy, who actually kind of, again, he reminds me of Fred. Not saying he's Fred, he just reminds me of Fred. So those are the conversations, right, that are going to go on in the room. They're going to have to do we want to go linebacker here? Because maybe there's a linebacker that we like that maybe isn't that far off in our tier system. Maybe we have more value for a cornerback right here opposed to an edge. We can get an edge in the second. So those are all the conversations that will be fascinating.
Landon Jackson.
Why not just completely blow this up and trade Trent CMC Ayuk for more draft compensation? Jason, I said it earlier on Twitter. To me, what constitutes a rebuild is moving off of Brock and or Kittle. Other than that, it's like those are your two cornerstones right now. And they're both in contract negotiations, which means they're in the conversation of, let's say we were to trade these guys, what would you theoretically give us in a figurative made up trade? Like those conversations could be happening because they need to get paid. So the 49ers have to go through the process of, are we going to foundationally build around Brock, or is this the time to go get more draft picks, go get other players, and kind of reset it? But the question becomes, that's a real rebuild, because who's going to be your quarterback? Tanner Mordecai?
No,
Jameis Winston?
Jameis Winston. At least we'll be fun.
It we'd be entertained. Hey, you say it all the time. We're not the content creators. The 49ers are.
And there's plenty of teams that are bad and boring. If you're going to lose games, at least be fun.
at least have Devondre Campbell walk off the field mid-game as you're getting eliminated from the playoffs. At least do something like that.
See, but last year I feel like I didn't have an ounce of fun. Like it just didn't feel fun like at all. There was nothing that's fun. At least
nothing was fun about it. Training camp wasn't fun.
None of it was I would
fun.
I would give the little amount of money that I have in my bank account to watch Jameis Winston go to the podium and have Grant Cohn ask him questions.
Oh my gosh. I would pay to see that as well.
That is content that you cannot pass up on. And if we're going to lose a bunch of games, let's at least get a bunch of great sound bites from Jameis Winston and have some fun. And it'll please Andrew Pasquini, by the way, big FSU guy.
Yes, I agree. So we'll see. Again, if that's where I think it's at. If you're moving off Brock or Kittle, then I would say see what you get for everyone, right? Mm-hmm. Just that's a rebuild. So we'll see. Not saying that's going to happen, just something to keep an eye on. James said, would you rather keep Ayuk and hope he comes back to the player he was in 2023, or trade him now for a legit starting defensive tackle?
So
I kind of feel like I know where you're going, but
well, this is the turning point with Brandon Ayuk. The front office doesn't like the way that he handled himself during the contract negotiations. Kyle Shanahan forced their hand instead of trading him because the 49ers were ready to cut their losses to keep him. Then the season begins, and Brandon Ayuk doesn't get off to the start that we all had hoped because he hadn't been in training camp. And then you toss in the devastating knee injury. And this is a turning point for the 49ers, because if you bank on Brandon Ayuk returning to form, and he does not, his contract is largely immovable. So while there is the question of him possibly bouncing back, and we don't know for certain, you're never going to get a chance to move him if you do for a higher return than this moment right here. Because unless you know what, let me take that back. Because if he does come back and he looks like that guy, then obviously people are going to be lining up to try to, trade for him, right? Like if he just comes right back and he's fine. But if
he's just saying in the hope, he's not even guaranteeing like, in this scenario, he's back. It's like still have to guess.
Right. So you're sitting and you're hoping that you get this return to form from him. But if you don't, everyone is going to know. And then you'll have such a hard time moving him. So I can see both ends of it. The problem is there's no definitive way to know. And you're taking a gamble one way or another. Because let's do the reverse. Let's say you trade Brandon Ayuk because you're nervous about him returning. And then you see that he's right back to form and you moved him for someone else. And he's that guy again. So you're taking a chance.
And then the guy you traded for goes down.
And he's injured. Right. Like, so you're taking a chance either way. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, for me,
Uh,
I feel like the whole idea of them taking calls is based on the idea of them not loving how the contract negotiation went, Kyle banging the table to keep him, and then how the season went, and now you have this injury to deal with on top. If you're asking me what would I do as the GM, it would depend on what I would be getting back. If
mhm.
you're going to take this contract but give me a higher pick, and I feel good about that, then maybe I'd be more inclined to do that, because then I can restock the cupboard right away with another wide receiver that I feel really good about. I think it would be based on the return. If you're just going to move him to move the contract, then it just goes into the whole idea that you're trying to reset this cap situation, and that's less about bringing in a new player and more about just clearing the salary. So it depends on what you get and what's the goal of moving Ayuk. I think that's the bigger question.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I get into it, I just want to shout out you guys. We've got 16 super chats today. Gray Fox with the leader in the clubhouse dropping 100 band. So thank you guys. Make sure you go like and subscribe both these videos. We're streaming on both channels. Make sure you go sub to Jason Aponte's channel and like up these videos, do all that good stuff. And again, I've been thinking that we've been angling towards getting out of here, but you guys just keep sending the super chats. Do you legitimately have to go pretty soon, or
It's all right.
so?
I can reschedule.
We'll go till the super
Jane, my
chats run
therapist,
out.
if you're watching this, we'll reschedule next week. It's fine. I could take a week off. And also, if you're watching this, the reason that I'm so anxious all the time and all the things that I tell you is because of the San Francisco 49ers. I actually am at peace with what happened between my parents divorcing and all that stuff. I'm good.
It's the 49ers fault. We're gonna
It's
have
the
to build
49ers.
that for those sessions. So until the super chats run out, we'll get this thing naturally wrapped up
Shout out to
that
you
way.
guys, man. No, shout
Yeah,
out to you
get
guys again. You know, the community, all you guys, the chat is live. We appreciate you guys tapping in. We know that you guys are at work and doing things and you have your family and all of those things. Appreciate the community. Just let's get these likes up. If you're in here, just hit that thumbs up. It helps us a ton. And it would be great. That's how you can really help us the most. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So the way that I would attack this question is, again, the word hope changes the situation.
Mhm.
If you said guaranteed you're going to get like a top 10 defensive tackle, and you're also getting out of that contract, and this is taking my personal, fandom for Brandon Ayuk out of this and putting my Parag Marathe, John Lynch hat on, I would definitely probably do that. If you're saying if you're saying he's going to return to what he was, then I'll probably keep him because I also feel confident that I can find a defensive tackle in the draft, if that makes sense. So I'm twisting it a little bit, but that's a good hypothetical question. New member to the channel, Brian. Shout out to you guys.
Welcome to the Spicy
Continuing
Squad.
to kill it. Daza says, if Niners are rebuilding, why pay Brock? Kyle,
Let's get to it. Let's get to it, Brad. You didn't want to talk about it, but I think we have to talk about it.
Kyle Lynch might be gone if they have another 6-win season.
Look, I'm gonna peel the curtain back and I'm gonna let you guys know a little behind the scenes stuff, and we're gonna attack this one. You know what? We can't run from it, Brad. This is it,
Of
right?
course, I know. I've already
Okay.
talked about it like 4 times.
So before we get on the stream, Brad and I go through the topics, how we're gonna do this, and we talked about, hey, we're gonna talk about this, the draft, free agency. We'll go off the chat, we'll go off of everybody else, and this conversation came up. This conversation right here came up, and Brad said, I don't really want to talk about it because it's inflammatory at times. People get up in arms about it, but let's do this. My question is this. If you give so much credit to Kyle Shanahan for Brock Purdy's success, and you are a person who believes that Brock Purdy is largely in the position that he's in because of the system that Kyle Shanahan has, why would you sign Brock Purdy and not have him tied to Kyle Shanahan for the time during the extension? I would ask this question to anyone that's watching as well too. Whoever the next coach would be if Kyle Shanahan was to leave, do you feel as bullish on Brock Purdy than if Kyle Shanahan was his coach? And the reason that I'm saying that is because we don't know who the coach would be. It's not going to be Ben Johnson because he's going to be with the Bears for a while. We don't know who the next person would be if there was any such move. But isn't the idea of extending Brock Purdy to be with Kyle Shanahan this entire time? And if it's not, why are you extending Brock Purdy if there is a chance that you don't believe that Kyle Shanahan is going to be here? I'm not saying that the 49ers don't believe that. Trust me. But these next 2 years, like I told you, Brad, are imperative to figure out what is going to happen in this next era of Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. But the idea of extending Brock Purdy without knowing that that comes with him attached to Kyle Shanahan, it seems like poor process because so much of what Brock has been able to do has to do with his physical gifts, and his mind and his processing and the way he plays football for sure. But isn't the consensus that it's under Kyle Shanahan and Kyle Shanahan's offense is kind of a glove in hand fit for him? That's the part that really just doesn't jive with me if we're talking about the security of Kyle Shanahan while trying to extend Brock Purdy. The whole team and the whole idea was supposed to be Brock and Kyle. Not Brock, and then maybe someone else. Because do you feel confident that that someone else, whoever it is, will be able to get the best out of Brock Purdy like Kyle Shanahan has? See, that wasn't so bad. I feel like that was concise. Yeah, that was
pretty good.
That was good.
Nice.
Yeah,
Well done.
It wasn't angry. It wasn't and it wasn't crazy. And I feel like that's not a hot take. Yeah, that's not a hot take. I thought that was logical as well too.
Yeah, and I think also too to kind of piggyback off that great point that you made. It's just like if Kyle and John aren't here after this year, you have to be able to conceptualize that a new general manager and head coach aren't tied to Brock. So that means they could also try to look to get out of the Brock Purdy business. Again, we're speaking hypothetically based on this scenario. So that's the interesting part about it, right? And I find it also interesting, what have both John and Kyle said? As long as we're here, we want Brock to be our quarterback. Okay, well, what happens if you aren't here? Then what? Do they go opposite of Kyle, go defensive coach? Do they hand the keys over to Robert Saul and say, you know what, you're in the building, might as well just take over? What do they do? So it's what makes this whole dynamic fascinating. So, and again, I'm a ranges of outcomes person, and there's a lot of ranges of outcomes that have been kind of bubbled up to the surface based on, the organizational realignment. So will those ranges of outcomes come to fruition? No idea, but we'll see. We'll see, because I would assume that you want to keep Brock and Kyle tied together.
Mm-hmm.
And if Kyle's not here, that means that's a full blown, you're rebuilding. That's I guess, I've been saying a rebuild would be Brock and Kittle getting traded. I guess the real rebuild would be the sign that Kyle and John aren't here. That's a real rebuild if we really want to get into that. So I think there's a lot of things up in the air right now, and where they land, we'll have to see. We'll have to see where it goes. So I think that means that a lot of things can potentially happen.
Oh, like a guest appearance?
Yeah. No. Anyways, that might be a good spot to put a bow on the conversation. I think we did a pretty masterful job of kind of being able to talk about all the moves that have happened, maybe the moves that haven't happened, and kind of the whole state of the 49ers. So Anything else you want to add on to this before we get out of here?
No, shout out to you guys again. This is, the community, all you guys, the chat. We appreciate it. You guys tuning in. Just, again, just hit us with that like on the video. That helps so much for the algorithm as well too. I know you guys are gonna yell. I write for NinersNation.com every day. There is a new article from me. What I've been working on is recapping each day, looking at each move for the 49ers, whether it's a subtraction or addition, and kind of giving you context as to what they're thinking. So you can check me out there. There should be a article, I believe, for power ranking the 49ers holes into the NFL draft coming from the entire staff. So you can look out for that. And subscribe to my channel. And, tomorrow, Peacock and Aponte, and then sprint right option with the masterful Andrew Pasquini. But, thank you guys. And again, thank you for the super chats and donations, and appreciate you guys a lot, man.
Absolutely. It was a great show. And hey, we'll see where the 49ers go when it's all said and done. Still a lot of things to follow with the 49ers off season, then the draft, then it's they got a season to play. So a lot of stuff left. Never a dull moment covering this team, right, Jason?
No. We are not the content creators. The 49ers are.
So appreciate everyone for tapping in. Make sure you like, subscribe, both channels, all that good stuff. We'll see you guys next week. State of the Franchise. We out. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it all right now.